salaries. A TWC2 study conducted recently found that 1 in 3 male foreign workers had good reason to believe they were being short paid. Another 1 in 3 had no way to check if what they were paid was the correct amount. In other words, only 1 worker in 3 was sure he was being correctly paid. A significant step forward was the introduction of a new rule in April 2016 requiring employers to issue itemized payslips. TWC2 immediately carried out a survey in June and July. We found that 33% of workers, 1/3 again, were still not getting itemized payslips. Another weakness in our system is that employers can pay salaries in cash. A slide further on will show how this severely disadvantages workers. For years, TWC2 has argued that it should be mandatory to pay them through their own bank accounts. This way, there is a neutral party, the bank, that has a record of how much was paid. This record can then serve as proof in case a dispute arises. The Ministry of Manpower's dismissive response to our urgings has been that workers already have a right to ask for payment into a bank account. Seriously? If any worker tried to assert this so-called right to bank gyro, this is what will happen. Does MOM not know this? If they don't, then they are completely out of touch. If they do know this and yet still unashamedly issue that nonsensical answer, what does that tell you about their attitude, about their openness to problems and readiness to consider solutions? These are the people in charge of operating the processes. Is it any surprise that things don't go according to plan? Speaking of plans, let me explain a little about a document known as an in-principle approval for a work permit, IPA for short. When an employer has decided whom he wishes to hire, and while the prospective worker is still in his home country, the employer submits an application for a work permit to the Ministry of Manpower. The Ministry then, unless there is reason to deny the application, sends a letter to the employer indicating its in-principle approval. A slightly different version of the letter is sent to the worker via the employer. The letter will state some essential facts as shown here. The Ministry's position, however, is that the letter is a form of notification and that these details were what the employer had submitted to the Ministry and not that the IPA is any sort of contract. Yet we have the same Ministry sponsoring an advertisement on Facebook advising all workers to have written contracts. How is this meaningful to foreign workers who are too disadvantaged, not least by the Ministry's own regulations, to demand anything? It would be simple to require all employers submitting work permit applications to have contracts based on a standard template. Disputes later on would be so much easier to sort out. But once again, where's the political will? Anyway, after coming to Singapore and starting work, these are the things that can go wrong with respect to salaries. Please press the pause button if you need more time to read the words. Our Employment Act stipulates that overtime work should be paid at a rate of 1.5 times the basic rate of pay. But as you can see here, there are ways for bosses to circumvent the law and trim their costs. And this is why TWC2 is arguing so strongly for bank payment. Almost every week, we get batches of workers coming to TWC2 complaining that they have not been paid for months. The law says that basic salaries should be paid by the 7th day of the following month and overtime paid by the 15th. But prosecutions for non-payment, well, few and far between again. The ministry tends to treat these cases as merely civil disputes between two private parties. But why not see these cases as violations of law, as criminal offenses, as intended by the law itself? Why the inaction, even when employers admit that they have not paid salaries on time? There are also written safeguards against arbitrarily reducing foreign workers' salaries or arbitrarily increasing deductions. But once again, even when they happen, even when employers have admitted doing so, we don't see prosecutions. There is no penalty to doing wrong. Very often, salary cases are made harder to sort out because the workers had been made by employers to sign all sorts of documents, yet are not given copies of them. Sometimes the workers either can't read English or aren't even given a chance to read the document. Are these valid contracts when the circumstances are so suspicious? Yet, from the cases we've seen, when workers complain to MOM about these circumstances, we learn that ministry officials take the view that the workers shouldn't have signed them if they had doubts at that moment, and that they cannot now dispute the terms of these documents. But this stance totally ignores the reality that workers didn't have any real choice in the matter. If they hesitated, let alone refused to sign, they would displease their boss, lose their jobs, and be left with ruinous financial consequences. Then, of course, there is this problem of cash payment. It opens the door to many abuses. In this regard, it may be worth mentioning that although we see the Middle East as among the worst places to be a foreign worker, and we often think of Singapore as so much better, that first world superficiality again, the UAE has actually mandated payment through bank. Singapore is backward by comparison.